The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Mail about deconstruction. We've talked about deconstruction a lot, but this is not the same video. It's been before. So let's read this mail. It says, "Hello, Perch Meister. Don't drink the pale ale." You may be talking about piss there, or just water beer. There are good golden ales. It's different from a pale ale, but anyway, I've gotten less. I used to drink beer. And then, like a lot of people, you get older and you switch to harder liquor. And, I'm in kind of a tequila phase right now, I would say. But anyway, it all is fine. And by the way, thank you for all the notes of people who are concerned about the quality of my litter. It's okay. I do go to the doctor regularly, and, I think things are okay. And keep in mind, I drink, but I don't drink excessively. And maybe, just throwing this out there, not to break kayfabe or anything, but maybe some of the comments about drinking to excess may be a bit of a bit. Just hypothetically speaking, it may be just a little bit of a bit. Much like most, many things other than Arby's. I do hate Arby's. You can burn. Anyway, back to the mail. It says, "I have two questions for you. The first is pretty simple. What do you think motivates the love of deconstruction? Why do so many people want to see their heroes tarnished? I don't get it, especially if the story has no redemption." Well, running a shop and seeing a lot of people come in and kind of what they ask for and what they do. And it's not necessarily what people buy. It's, to me, the more telling thing is what happens months later. So a lot of people like Civil War. They enjoyed that series. They liked kind of the different dynamic of it. The art was great. Storytelling was great. But Civil War sold wonderfully. And I love Marvel in that moment because they moved a lot of copies of a lot of comics out the door. And they were doing a lot of things right. What followed was the more interesting thing to analyze. What happened 6 months later? What lesson did Marvel learn from it? Did they steer more into events? Did they recognize kind of the magic that was captured behind the series and the storytelling? Were they able to capitalize on it? One of the things that, love or hate him, that Mark Millar did in Civil War was that each chapter of it ended with not a cliffhanger exactly, but a big hook. Not just for the next issue of the series, but for all the tie-ins. And when you have episodic storytelling, that means a lot. So, being able to end on Spider-Man reveals himself, and then you got a month before the next issue comes out, and people are excited for that next issue. But because they don't want to wait a month, Miller, whether he knew it or didn't know it, I don't know, consciously, subconsciously, he set up a scenario where a bunch of other titles would be purchased in that month that might not normally be purchased because people were so excited about what was going to happen next in the story. What does all this have to do with deconstruction? Well, deconstruction, much like kind of some of the Civil War and that story, there's a gimmick to it. Miller has completely accepted the fact that there's a gimmick to doing a big event and to telling kind of the cinematic story and having these kind of cliffhanger, not quite cliffhanger moments at the end of every chapter. Deconstruction is also a gimmick. And the gimmick is actually a much simpler one. It's called, you will believe your hero will be in this position, more or less. Deconstruction is about taking something that was once solid and, literally in the name, deconstructing it, taking it and peeling back the layers, revealing that the heroism isn't as heroic, or that the person who never fails, and just what happens when you introduce flaws. And the difference between, I think, deconstruction and when you're truly doing episodic storytelling right is that deconstruction, it tends to be like junk food. It gives you the sugar high at the moment, but then fairly quickly it fades. And if you look at a lot of the comics where deconstruction was the main thrust of it, it got a pop. People paid attention, and then the attention failed. It started to drop in popularity. It started to, it didn't keep it forward because it's kind of a one shot and you're done. You deconstruct Superman, and then you have to live with deconstructed Superman, and what comes next usually isn't thought out. So what makes it popular? Why do people love it? Because it's like junk food. People love junk food, and they love that moment of seeing something that they didn't expect, seeing the hero in a position that is unusual and natural for that hero. And so that's why it gets attention. It's like, you won't believe your eyes. It's much like the 70s Marvel covers would say, shocking end in this issue, kind of as a blurb on the front. It's that I'm being taken to a place I didn't expect. That's why people love it. They do love the surprise. In one way, the love of surprise is one reason why several modern comics are failing to some extent, because they want to kind of deconstruct the plot itself. They want to take heroes, say, well, but yeah, people wouldn't expect if the heroes were eating lunch instead of fighting crime. That's deconstruction. Well, it's deconstructing the genre, maybe, but not the characters. And there is really nothing surprising about, I picked up a $4 comic expecting a superhero story, and I got them eating lunch. That's not, it's a surprise. It's not a good surprise, and it's not one that's going to last. But what is telling is, you look at the months that follow these deconstruction events, and you discover that, like junk food, the attention fails fast. So while people might kind of love to see it, they love to see their heroes, basically taken down a notch or in a situation they don't expect. They were reading that hero for a reason. And when 3 months, 4 months later, the hero is kind of aimless or damaged from this moment, people tend to drop the title. It's not what brought them to the table in the first place. It's like, you may like eating donuts. If you eat donuts for every meal, very quickly you're going to get sick of them. It feels good. It feels like you're doing something kind of crazy the first day when you just, have donuts for dinner, but you can't sustain like that. And that's what deconstruction is very like. I think the other thing, just to throw in there, and then we get to the rest of the mail, is that deconstruction, it is, people view it as more adult storytelling, meaning, yay, if a superhero is just having a superhero adventure, that's kid stuff. We really want to see, Superman accused of rape. That makes me feel like a grown-up. There is that element too. There's this moment with a lot of comic purchases that would come into the store, and the customers would say, I'm moving on to more mature titles. I'm buying, this Max series. Well, some of the, Punisher Max was pretty great. A lot of them were not. And so very quickly people are like, I'm getting I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm getting a big boy title. And then you get it and you're like, oh, it kind of sucks. Actually, I want to go back to that escapist fantasy. And then by the time you get into like your 30s and the 40s, that you absolutely want to get back to when you were a kid again, because everything sucks. But anyway, let's get to the rest of the mail. It says, second, on the same note, can heroes even be redeemed? Sites like CBR, Screen Rant, and Bleeding Cool have been reminding fans of, remember this problematic Hal Jordan moment when he dated a teen? I have too, in fairness, but because it's funny. I mean, it's actually not funny at all, but it's also funny. Or just FYI, Hank Pym beat up Janet Van Dyne. What I'm saying here is that the darkness is very hard to rub off, even after 5 decades and countless reboots. But the big two still have stories where heroes are revealed to be piece of shit types. I still have the ick over Strange Adventures and how they did Mr. Terrific and Adam Strange. I'm imagining the year 2040, DC tries relaunching Adam Strange, and some editor-journalist says, just FYI, this character is a war criminal. Hopefully whatever social era we're in has worn off by then. God, hoping. I hope so too. Yeah, heroes can be redeemed. Actually, the heroes can be redeemed super easy, barely an inconvenience. It's really easy to walk back from this stuff. And the way you do it is you just tell a good story, and then you ignore Bleeding Cool and CBR. Because here's the thing, that whole thing I said at the beginning about, this kind of junk food approach where things that are shocking get a initial burst of attention. Well, that's the same with YouTube. It's the same with Bleeding Cool. It's the same with the Bee. It's the same with all these sites. Their business model is not to inform you about comics. It's not to help you love comics. Their business model is to get you to see ads, so they scrape enough money together to, be able to afford chicken dinner when they go out to a con. That's what these sites are about. They're about getting cash from you, and they know they get cash from you if they sell more tantalizing stuff. Unfortunately, an article of Hal Jordan once dated a teen gets a lot more clicks. And even if it's buried in an article and a complete, sham like Rich will do things like he'll have an article and they'll just pop in the middle links to other sites. Like the remember the time when Hal Jordan was a problematic pedophile, and he'll just leave it there without a lot of context. But it's a link to another article where, in many cases, spiders to 50 other articles all that is, every time he's doing that, he's hoping you're going to go, what do you, problematic, pedophile, what? And then I'm going to click on this. And then you click on it. And then you've just given him an extra, 0.02 cents for those ads. And, that's all that's going on there. It's junk food. So the news sites have a vested interest in continuing to remind you of the most shocking and kind of titillating things that have happened in comics. They absolutely do and absolutely will. And just, if I'm predicting the future here, right now there's a vague, we don't like the baddies in the internet. But if I fast forward 10 years from now, 10 years, assuming Bleeding Cool is still, around and like, any good carcass on the side of the road that's rotted, baked in the sun, is now stick to the asphalt, it probably still will be around. They're remember the time Iceman was revealed to be gay in a problematic moment. They're gonna, all the things that they've been kind of hammering the fans on, they're gonna turn around and use for clickbait in the future. Like, guaranteed. And if you think, no, these people are they're firmly committed to their ideology. No, they are not. They are not. This is one of the biggest myths in all of this. At one point, Bleeding Cool ran photos of Kieran Gillen that were pretty inappropriate to the point that she had to comment on it. This is the site that champions feminism and women's rights. They're posting, the equivalent of upskirt photos. They've posted, girls in, bra and panties doing cosplay in articles against the consent of the people who are doing it. So one of the biggest kind of jokes here is that some of these sites have made comments about how, we don't condone, cosplay without consent. You have to get somebody's permission to take a photo. And hey, let's be honest, you should do that because it's just, it's just common decency if you're going to take a photo of somebody, whatever they're doing, saying, hey, can I take your photo, is a polite thing to do. But this same site that is kind of, haranguing people about this stuff has posted cosplay photos from conventions, for years. And people in those photos have written and said, hey, I don't agree with having my photo in there. Take my photo down. And been blocked on Twitter when they asked for that. And photos were not taken down. This absolutely has happened. Absolutely. So why do people do it? It's junk food. They're trying to get attention. So can heroes be redeemed? Easily and quickly with a good story. You can deconstruct heroes, but in many cases, the deconstruction, it's not good. They're pretty bad deconstruction. The deconstruction in many cases, again, not all, but in many cases, it's a very weak crutch the writers use to, deliver a story or do something. And in most cases, it's just not very good. They tend to rely on the same tropes, the same kind of hacky storytelling approach. And it's just, in the end, it's not a very engaging story. So, it's not good. And so they're often forgotten. But good stories aren't. So, again, there's exceptions to every rule. Born Again and some of the stuff that Frank Miller did back in the day absolutely is remembered because it was deconstruction, but it was also good storytelling. But, Hank Pym, how do you redeem Hank Pym? Just have him go out and be a hero and do things and just try and be the best guy he can. And you don't need to reference it in the comic. Like, I was in a dark place or I beat my wife at one point. You don't need to tell that story. If you truly want to redeem the character, just have them move on. And no, I've seen articles about these characters should never move on. They've done spousal abuse and this is they should never move on for it. They should always feel bad about it. In real life with real people, yeah, you do need to redeem yourself, and yeah, you do need to feel bad for the things you've done if they're a crime or if in real life, somebody was doing what Hank Pym did, then yeah, you do have to live with it, and you do have to live with it every day, and you have to think about the damage you caused, for sure. In escapist comics, yeah, they don't really need to do that. I mean, I'm not saying they just kind of ignore everything, but put it this way: Hank Pym has they've done that storyline. They've had him quote unquote apologize and kind of face what he did a lot. There's been a lot more stories and arcs of him facing what he did than there was the entire storyline where he kind of descended into madness in the first place. So that it's been done. And because these characters don't age and because it's all complete fantasy, you don't need to keep going over that plot over and over and over for some sense of justice. You can have the character just kind of move on at this point. But anyway, a lot there. Thank you very much for the mail. What do you think about all this deconstruction? Can heroes be redeemed? Why do people love it so much? Love to hear your thoughts on the matter. Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.